Welcome to Inside Look. I'm Jeff Lyons, and I'm joined today by Mike Blake, Hall of Famer, Indiana broadcaster, 50-plus member of the 14 News family, and full of great stories. And we're going to get into those next here on Inside Look. I was thinking about this the other day, and by the way, congratulations. 80 years old, 54 years at the station, going on 55, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that, what, are there like three people in the whole country that have ever hung on that long?
I don't know about that. But, I've said this ever since I can remember. I feel blessed, Jeff, and I felt blessed when I came down here. I had no intent. You know, in our business, you usually have to move out to move up. So if you'd have told me I was going to be here 5 years, I'd have said, "Oh, I'll be out of here by then."
Well, that was 35-year-old Mike Blake, though. He's just a head full of steam and everything. Well, or 25, right, when you came here. My math's terrible, which is why I'm over in weather most of the time. But, I was thinking about this. So, the Rolling Stones has Mick Jagger. The United Kingdom had the Queen Elizabeth for 70 years. We've got Mike Blake. I mean, you are our figurehead. You're sort of the heart, the soul, the face of WFIE. So my question is, what's that like? A little pressure? I mean, do you feel like you're, the grand statesman here?
First of all, thank you. That's very flattering. I think one of the reasons I've been able to last, Jeff, is I'm comfortable with the PR side of it. There are a lot of talented people in this world and in our profession who, once they're off the air, they didn't want to go out and be among them, as I say. But of course with sports, it was tailor-made to go out, and I had to be out among the crowd and so forth. And I really have enjoyed that. I feel very flattered, and of course I'm the lead dinosaur in Evansville. I see a lot of people who, remember and I sometimes don't, but I'm thinking, by golly, that's right.
I know that guy from
that
somewhere.
And so forth.
Well, I think the biggest thrill that I get working here and working with you for 30-some years, I love to go to a thing and be just behind you and watch the room respond to you, because they're not responding to me. And it's amazing. If you walk in, everybody looks in here. Oh, there's Mike Blake over there. And people come right up, and you're shaking hands. I mean, you're like,
just hopefully they're not disappointed.
No. I mean, and you're always, giving everybody time and everything.
Yeah.
Doesn't that? I mean, you get strength from that, or are you thinking, man, what am I going to say?
I think. I've always enjoyed, again, the public relations side of it. I think you have to be very careful. And I've made a lot of mistakes. I've said some goofy things.
Say a few now. No.
Both on and off the air. But I've just, as I say, it's funny. I said I've had 4 love affairs since I came to Evansville. One, I fell in love with TV and the live TV. Then I fell in love with something called the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Jeff, I was clueless. I couldn't even spell dystrophy. But when I look back at how wonderful that was, and you, and I think we enjoyed doing the telethons.
Oh, yeah, right? It was a hoot.
That was a great. Then I fell in love with the real love of my life, my late wife, Jenny. And because I was always happy at home, I could always be, hey, let's go to work. I never came to work unhappy. And then the last thing, I fell in love with the Tri-State. And I remember being told when I was a young man that the longer you're in a market, and my wife called it, she said, honey, if we're still, and she was ready to go. They said, he's in Evansville. He's still in Evansville because of you, Jenny. And she says, he actually likes Evansville. I actually love the Tri-State. And you're the same way. I think being a local guy, you enjoy going out into the area. And again, I was clueless about what I think God puts us where He needs us or wants us, and I have no complaints.
Okay. One thing, and let's talk about Jenny for a minute, if you might, your wife, because she was, as my grandmother would say, a live wire.
Oh, yeah.
Every time I met her, she always was a lot of fun. And I remember something that kind of struck me when I was, working when we were all in the 10 o'clock news together. This would have been 25 years ago,
Right.
maybe. You always called Jenny after the 10. Every
Yes.
night you would be on the phone. What would you guys talk about?
I think it was, as I look back, I was so grateful. But I thought in the initial years, I'd say, "Honey, how'd I do?" She said, "Mike, you were fine. Don't." And I would think to some extent I might beat myself up over.
Yeah.
She says, "Nobody cares about that. Get over it." And she says, "If you want milk and ice cream, pick it up. At Great
Right.
Scott or wherever." But to have just to be able to talk to her, and also, "Honey, do we need anything on the way home?"
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna, as the late crew would do. We went to the original Rock-A-Bar over on Kentucky Avenue.
Yeah.
And guys would come from Henderson, from WEHT, and also from downtown. It was a real show. And I would do that. But no, that just being able to talk to her, and I would call during the middle of the telethon. She'd be up. This is when we were doing a show 21 hours.
Right.
And I say, "Honey, go to bed." She says, "Oh, yeah." She says, "By the way, I think you did. I thought so and so. That Jeff Lyons, Jeff is so good."
No,
blah, blah, blah. No, and it was wonderful. And it was.
Did she ever say on the other end, "Why didn't you lead with Memorial instead of this, that, or the other?"
And I say this to all of you guys who have kids playing sports. As soon as I have three boys, they all played sports. And when the highlights of either Mike, Billy, or Patrick, both of whom, the last two played three sports, once I showed their highlights, she went over to the other stations
to see if the highlights were over there
to
too.
see if they had her beloved son. And it's funny, on a national level, Bob Greasy's wife, I got to know really well, Ida, and she would call me, and she said, "Now don't you tell Bob, he's coming into town." And I'd smile, and I said, "Oh, okay, he's not going to shoot me if I show up." No, but don't tell him. Just happen to be there when he comes in. And what I realized, all parents, but mothers especially, her son was at the time one of the most famous pro football athletes in the world. But she wanted to see him on local TV and make sure that, he's coming home.
She was like his press agent locally,
There
right?
you go.
And what are you going to say to Mrs. Greasy, right? I mean, you have to put him on.
And
so.
he'd say to me after about that, I said,
"Yeah,
my mom, right?" I said, "I don't know. I just thought I'd meet you, But that's the power of this medium.
Yeah.
And,
Well, you talked about public relations, and you
Yeah.
enjoy kind of the schmooze factor, getting out there
Working
talking.
the room.
But I remember you telling me when you first came here, and of course at that time it was Jack McLean. Good night to all good sports. That guy was sort of a pale comparison to what you would become.
Well.
But he would go to Turner's, was it, downtown, and
Jim Lelitz.
and work the room.
Oh, yeah.
And you'd go with. So you were kind of like me. You were behind him. So what did you learn from Jack
Well,
McLean?
In some cases, I'd be for him because, see, poor Jack, he was diabetic, and he couldn't drive at night. He'd hear, and he had a very deep voice, and be, "Hey, Jack, what do you say there, Jack?" And he'd go, "Mike, who was that?" And I'd say, it was the mayor, Jack. It was the mayor. He would, but I only worked with him a year, but he was a throwback to the old glory days of radio. And
that must be where that delivery came from,
Oh, yeah.
Greetings, sports fans, that kind
right.
of thing.
And he was at the stage of his life. By the time I worked with him, he was well into his 50s. And ironically, we only worked together one full year, but we would go to dinner every night. And Turner's was one of our haunts, And
how do you think you became? I'll just say you're you're the face of the state. I mean, you're like our icon, if you will.
Yeah.
Somebody sees you and they're like, "Oh, there's Channel 14." Or it happened early in your career because in putting together the anniversary showing, I look back and you were often like the MC of when they turned the new transmitter on, or you were just always in that role. Even when we'd have like a potluck dinner in the studio,
or if somebody left the station,
right? And you always had to pray, right? Remember?
Yeah.
So did you always have something like in your pocket ready to say because you were always called on?
That's nice of you to say. But again, I think unlike with news or weather, you'd have to stay here, except to do live shots.
Sure.
You've been marvelous doing all kinds of live shots for when you spend a week down there at the Fall Festival or wherever we went.
Right.
14 listens. Remember that?
Oh, I do.
The bus tours. But I think in my case, I was I lobbied for that. I would go and say, "Do you need an MC?" And people would say, "Well, yeah, we do." And I think it helped me. And again, I was a good MC 40, 50 years ago. I'm a better MC today because I realize, hey, you're not reinventing the wheel, but it fits the persona. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and
like chief eulogist of the tri-state. I mean,
there you
go. Get every gig. But people seek you out because, and I guess that's what always came through. Because even when I was young, watching, Channel 14. It was just like, that's Mike Blake, and you would listen, and you had that great still had the great voice, and then I'd see you out like at a football game, and then you'd be on TV that night, and that was exciting for me, that you were an actual person, because I never saw Marcia, never saw David. You just never ran into them any place.
And again, another reason why I think we've been successful, we speak extemporaneously. You don't have to have a script. Whereas if somebody, I don't know where I heard it, said to be a great network news anchor took about 5 years to learn how to read properly. And I can remember when I was, I was very excited to do the 5, but I was scared to death, and I told Conrad Cagle at the time.
This is when they put you on the 5 o'clock news from sports, right?
Yeah, and I said, they said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I'm excited, but I don't know if I want to give up sports." And they said, "You don't have to." But they knew, they were wise enough. In this business, there were more opportunities in news. And now with the influx of the ESPNs and the Fox Sports and all my career has been lengthened because I was able to do other things. And but it all started from the fact that originally I was out there, and everybody has a brand, I think.
Oh, you are a brand.
Yeah.
I mean, they're working on the shower curtains and the cake mix right now.
No, but I mean that, and it allowed me, especially now when I do midday.
Sure.
If you'd have told me 50 years ago you're going to do a midday show, I said, "What? You got to be kidding me!" But I really enjoy it, and I think it's that comfortability, But you still, I can remember when I went to grad school, Jeff. The odds of me getting a master's.
This was at Loras, right?
I went to Loras College in Dubuque, Iowa, a small liberal arts Catholic school. Then I went to University of Iowa, right in the late '60s. And when I got my master's, and I had to write a thesis, Jeffrey.
But you wrote a thesis?
I wrote a thesis, 100 and some pages, variables associated with the longevity of primetime TV shows. In other words, and I researched every show that started on television in the late 40s through 1967. I graduated in '68. But as I was handed my diploma from this brilliant, he was a Jewish PhD. He had a PhD in communications. There was no radio, TV per se,
right?
And he had one in physics. I went, whoa! But he was a great. And he said, "No, I think you meant to." But as he handed me my degree, and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I've got a master's." He said, "Your education is now just beginning." And I've told 1,000 young people, the more you know, or the more degrees the more you realize there's so much more to know, and you never, ever know it all. And that's why you'll hear companies say, but I remember my daughter was a broadcast journalist, but they wanted her in a sales position. And she said, "But I've got my degree in broadcasting." He said, "We'll teach you. If you're coachable, coaches will find the right place for you." And the same thing in broadcasting. You never thought, I don't think, that you were going to do, 80 different things, but think of all the live shots and all and talking for hours about and making sense of all these weather figures. I mean, we're fortunate.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, we're both very blessed to work here and to be, here in the tri-state.
Absolutely.
And just to talk, I mean, and when we launched the podcast here, Inside Look, it's just that, it's just conversation and things like that. Now, because you've been here an extended period, I foresee us having you back because we got to tell some of the great stories, but we're almost out of time today.
Yeah.
But I also
anytime.
No, I know anytime. What I need to do is plant a microphone on you when we go to lunch sometime and just let it ride, right? No, I won't.
No.
You had an actual look of fear there for a fleeting second. The only other thing I wanted to ask and have you talk about is, it's a huge milestone, at least in my opinion, to stick with a career, especially one place for 50 years.
Yeah.
But what drives you? Like when you get up in the morning and you think, okay, I'm going up to 14 today, what's the thing that makes you come up here with,
I think it's I really, and again, you have to, as you know, you have to have an ego to be in this business. I think everybody's got an opinion. That's why we have now with Facebook and all Twitter or X and so forth. Right. But we got it needs policing. But I think I've always really enjoyed the public speaking. I had when I was at Loras College. I'm taking you back. I'll make this quick.
No, it's all right.
In high school, I was on a basketball and baseball team. So my coach, I didn't play as much, but he said, "Hey Blake, we're doing there's a speech tournament at the end of the season, and you're going to represent Mount Carmel." Mount Carmel High School was an all-boys school in Chicago. 4 of the best years of my life. Anyway, I go to this. I could barely write a speech. And I came in second, but I can remember in the car going home, I cried, and I thought, I really wanted to win that. Well, as I got to Loras, I had a pipe dream that I was going to walk on in baseball, but I didn't, and I won the freshman oratory contest, and that changed my life dramatically. My speech instructor, that's a whole different podcast. He was amazing. He's the one that said, he said, I want you to be one of my orators starting in my sophomore year. And he says, I want you to research mail order guns. And I said, mail order guns? Well, anyway, I'm at Bradley University, one of the largest speech tournaments in the country. There are like 75 schools. I'm in this first or second round. There's 3 judges. There's maybe a parent or 2, but that's it. And there's a very attractive, articulate girl from Central Michigan or Western Michigan or Michigan, and she's speaking about the inefficiency of the vice presidency. And we walk on, and I knew if I'm going to advance, I got to beat her. And we're talking to each other, and we see this crowd at the Union. Well, the crowd was there to see JFK had just been shot with a mail order gun.
Friday, November 22nd.
And
you know exactly where you were then.
Right, and the inefficient Lyndon Baines Johnson was being sworn in as the next president. Because of that experience and some of the rejection you get in being in speech, I always enjoyed. And I said, I fell in love with TV, and you're a natural on it, and then I can't tell you what the telethon was. I didn't know anything about dystrophy. I knew about Jerry Lewis, but that stuff, all that experience, and then the sports, which I really love. And then when they said, we want you to do play-by-play.
Yeah, that was the hook. This is
hook.
When you came down to interview. I think you were going to be like an announcer and a weatherman, right? And then they said, oh, by the way, maybe sports too.
Well,
and that was
Mike Vanderveer, who became mayor, was the news director, and Uncle Dudley, one of the legendary guys of the station, he said, anyway, Vanderveer, when he took me to the station, I hired in as a weatherman, and did thank goodness I wasn't competing with you, but I was up against Marcia for a
and
year.
Marcia Yockey, who
For
was
a
our
year.
other patron saint here at the station, but she
and
was
then
over on Channel 7.
Thank God she came back to 14
Yeah.
and relieved me of doing the weather.
Yeah.
But it's a long.
So it all worked out. No, it,
yeah,
and,
yeah.
So
No.
it's interesting though, because I think a lot of people see you, they admire you, everybody loves you,
Well.
but they don't know much about you. You know,
Yeah.
they know you're a nice guy. I have to ask one final question.
Sure.
Every time we ever talk about anybody, you will always put on at the very end, he's a good egg. She's a good egg. He's a good egg. Did you ever meet a bad egg in these 54 years?
Occasionally, sure.
Maybe
sure.
one that was a little iffy, an iffy egg.
Jeff, and this is I can take no credit. I've told people I wish I would have known my mom and dad. I had 3 older brothers. My sister, who is still alive, thank goodness, she cried when I was born because she wanted a baby sister. But that foundation, I was so lucky, and then I got a slew of nieces and nephews, but the jewel was Jenny. Again, I won the lottery February 17th, 1973, and I mean that just gave me, as I said, because I was happy at home. I think I didn't have some of the angst with the job. Now, I still wanted to get out of here, but I couldn't pull the trigger. I almost went to Miami, but glad I didn't. And that was when Conrad Cagle, that was 7 years after I got here, I was offered the ABC affiliate in Miami, which was the 10th market at the time. And I thought, okay, here we go. We went down there. Our bags were packed. And then Conrad said, we're going to do play-by-play. And that was the...
So it's always been sports, one way or the other, that they've hooked you back in here.
See,
and that's another whole podcast. Maybe we'll get you and Dean Webster in
there
here
you
because
go.
you follow the Aces
there you go.
with play-by-play. I
Hey,
appreciate you coming out
Jeff,
here for
thanks.
podcast
Honored.
number 3.
Honored, and congratulations on all you're doing. And I hope this is just another way we can continue to be the Tri-States news leader.
Well, I hope so too, right? Otherwise, we're going to be
Well,
out
we're
there
out like Grandpa
painting
Steve.
stripes. That's right, in the parking lot. All right, thanks for watching Inside Look with Mike Blake, broadcast legend and 54-year veteran here at 14 News. Be sure to watch for Inside Look wherever you get your podcasts.